Da 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 Living in the moment wasn't something Johnny was capable of, in the sense that he didn't really feel like he was living at all. He'd studied a bunch of New Age hogwash about psychic vampirism and empaths, but had to do simply that he was survived as an empty shell, consuming the realities around him and forming a life out of the bits and pieces that weren't too hard to swallow. He'd never say he was miserable, because he didn't want the attention of someone trying to fix him, and preferred therefore to say nothing at all. He just lived like this, in his own little bubble of solitude and sadness, trying to go unnoticed when he left out into the world. Before last Tuesday began, he awoke like normal at 7:45 and stared at the void in the dark that was created from his own blurred vision and unawakened mind. He eventually made his way to the bathroom, where he vigorously brushed his teeth with mouthwash until the foam from his mouth was brown from mixing with his own blood. He looked in the mirror and practiced the expressions he thought he would need for the day so that he looked as natural as he could before executing them before his co-workers. What co-workers he would have, and random passerbys, so that he could draw as little attention to himself as usual. He was only looking forward to his lunch, a small bit of egg salad he had made between 2 pieces of sliced bread he had left in the cabinet, and his conversation with Ashley. Ashley was the new girl who'd started in the shoe department about a month back. Her hair was a golden sea that revealed a swirling cerulean cavern you could get lost in for hours, even if you only saw one eye. She'd bite her lip whenever she smiled, something that replaced what should have been laughter between jokes and subtle flirtations. The silent beauty she displayed in her amusement was a sign of light and hope that feelings could stir in him, that he didn't want to vomit up in a sink after binge drinking. So this day, when he met her in the break room, eating his egg sandwich with a side of ginger ale for his dietary attempts to achieve his 20-year-old body again at 25, he was alarmed at the feeling of his skin being touched by hers. The gentle glide of electricity that swam through his ulna and radius as her fingers cascaded the length of his forearm. "Hey there, handsome," she said coyly. Johnny sat there in a state of shock, as if he'd actually been struck with a jolt. He hadn't felt the touch of a woman in quite some time, not one that wasn't an accidental bump or graze. The sensation lingered even after Ashley sat down across from him at the break table. His sad attempt at composure was jarring. "Hey there, beautiful," he sort of choked out. Ashley smiled, throwing her head back, and grabbed a baby carrot he had in the plastic bag next to his sandwich. "You think I'm beautiful?" she said. Johnny stared at her, not really knowing what to say. He hadn't really thought about it before that moment, actually. But looking at her, that sea of blonde, those cerulean swirls, those pink and red lips from little nipples she'd given between words. Yeah, she was beautiful. He felt like he said all that with his eyes, at least by her expression, because her eyes were fixated on him, and she couldn't stop smiling. "Hey, how long's your break today anyway?" He thought for a moment before answering. Actually, I'm off, I think," he said. She looked over at the clock, and then back at him. "Funny, me too." Johnny was surprised in the coming moments. He'd never been asked to a motel room by a girl before. So he just awkwardly said yes, got in his car, and started driving to the address that she'd given him. This was also sudden, especially for someone who spent most of his time trying to pretend like he didn't have feelings. Suddenly he felt so much. Anxiety, nervousness, all of it rushing through him. He tried to focus on the road. It didn't seem like the motel was far, and when he approached, the red and brown brick and the dirty sign had all of the nuances that he'd imagine a dirty hotel room would. He didn't really know where to park, but his phone had gone off telling him room 37. So he just drove all the way to the back and parked his car next to a trash can. He got out, breathed into his hand, making sure his breath wasn't bad, looked into his rearview mirror, and realized how awkward he was standing half in and half out of the car before shutting the door, fixing his clothes, and walking towards the door of the motel room 37. He knocked. It's open. Johnny walked inside the dark motel room, and after being told to shut the door behind him, he did. He looked and believed he saw little glimpses of the white in her eyes in the dark before she hit a lamp, and there she stood before him. There's no way she wore this bra and panty set to work just 'cause she planned this against her red skin. Red skin, he thought. He just realized how hot it was in the room. Sweltering. Hotter in the room than it was outside. And suddenly he felt like he couldn't move. She started walking towards him. Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. The words echoed in his head. He couldn't find a thought. Johnny, Johnny, Johnny. He was on his knees. Her skin moved closer. Not her, but her skin. As if it was just falling off her body onto him. And then it did. He couldn't move his arms to catch it. There was just a drippy skeleton standing there in the room, in the dark. Those eyes, once cerulean, now black and hollow, popped, pussy, flowing down the skull that was standing before him, words coming from nothing inside his head. Johnny. So easy. Johnny. It was like a paper cut across his whole head. That's what it felt like. Her hand cutting through his face. He looked up. He saw the television was still going. He realized he could move his neck, only for it to hit the ground. Television. Johnny. His name. A corpse on the floor. That's all he was. And he knew it. Every day he got up. Every day he brushed his teeth, made his egg sandwich, and went to work. He was just a corpse. And now he really was. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of D.L. Holmes Presents. Remember, you can always support the channel by donating coffee, and you can check out what I do in the rest of my spare time through all my social media. The link tree is down there below. So remember, every Saturday, I'll be posting a new episode, and like, subscribe, and tune in next week for another episode of D.L. Holmes Presents.